Alright, folks, let's try this again. Once again, welcome to Schnockered Wrestling Review. I'm your host, George the Drunken Animal. Today I'm going to be doing a retro review. Considering we have SummerSlam coming up, I thought I'd go back and watch SummerSlam 1988, which was the earliest SummerSlam that they have on the network. And I'm pretty sure it was the first ever SummerSlam. And I will be drinking me some Bombay Sapphire East gin with orange juice out of my customary Doom glass. As you can see, I've already started, so this ought to really end up fun. So, first things, your announced team on this show is Gorilla Monsoon and Superstar Billy Graham. An interesting combination. Superstar he'd been retired from active wrestling for a while not long at this point, but and I guess they just decided to put him with Monsoon for whatever reason. They really, as an announced team, they really didn't click that well. But you had a lot of the classic Monsoon-isms. The one phrase he kept saying throughout the entire show was, "It's a happening." I swear to God, like the first match was about a 20-minute tag match. I swear to God, I think I counted about 5-6 different times he kept throwing out the phrase, "It's a happening." I have no fucking clue what the hell a happening is or why the fuck he was calling it that, but that was his big catchphrase of the night. And then at one point, he pulls out his Gorilla Monsoon, what would you call it? The medical dictionary for himself. When somebody's working on somebody's leg and he goes, "Yes, he's working on his collateral lateral ligament there. That's going to be really painful." So, if anybody knows what a collateral lateral ligament is, please let me know. I've never heard of it, but hell, he's Gorilla Monsoon. He knows what he's talking about, right? Anyway, I'm not going to go over every single match. I'll just give the highlights of most of the big ones that I remember and whatnot. The first match was a tag match with the British Bulldogs versus the Rougeau brothers, Jacques and Raymond. From what I remember hearing during this time, there was legitimate beef between these two teams, and it really showed. This was a really stiff match. They were pretty laying into each other really, really stiffly throughout the match, and what surprised me is it actually went to a 20-minute time limit, which is something you very rarely, if ever, see nowadays. But it was as good a match as you would expect, considering the people in there. They really went out there, and it was a really great opener. Then there was a match with Ken Patera versus Bad News Brown. I'm assuming this is right after Patera had gotten out of prison for his little incident in Minnesota. If you listen to the latest Ric Flair podcast, or about now, it's been about a week or so ago, but he had Ken Patera on his podcast, and Patera goes into detail exactly what had happened and what went on with that, and I highly suggest checking that out, because it is an interesting story from his perspective and what had happened to him while he was in prison, how the McMahons had tried to help him out, sort of. But yeah, just check out the podcast. It was rather interesting. And the other thing I noticed in this show was how different moves that nowadays are used by everybody as just transition moves were considered legit finishers. Namely, Bad News Allen was using an Insiguri he called the Ghetto Blaster as a finisher, and that was still really protected. Nobody else was using that type of kick at the time, and nobody ever kicked out of that, at least at this point in his career. So, and in this match, it was no different. He did end up getting a win with the Ghetto Blaster. Not a great match, not a terrible match. That's pretty much the theme of the entire show here. Then another match in there, you had another tag match. You had the Powers of Pain versus the Bolsheviks. Another big man tag match. Warlord and Barbarian with facing what were the names? Oh, Volkov and Boris Zukov. Another thing you notice during the show, there are a lot of managers in these matches. I want to say one of the only, the first two matches didn't have managers in them, but pretty much from this one on, almost every one had some kind of manager, or they were at least mentioning that they had a manager. But because the Barbarian and Warlord, they came out with the Baron, which I'm assuming was Baron von Raschke in this kind of hooded thing, the big hooded cape that Darth Vader was using in the prequels or whatever. I can't even think of, just a big hooded cape that just kind of it was odd. And then the Bolsheviks had Dr. Style Slick. So this was just basically I wouldn't call it a squash match, but it was a match designed to showcase Warlord and Barbarian, trying to set them up for an eventual feud against against Demolition, who were the tag champs at the time. So they end up getting the win with that. And it was what it was. You also had a segment with Brother Love that they could have quite easily done without. This show ended up being over 2.5 hours long. They could have easily not had this segment at all. It was just Brother Love coming out, doing his usual spiel, and then bringing out Hacksaw Jim Duggan to spout his nonsense and BS. Very easily forgettable. Nothing to see here, folks. Just move along. Then let's see what other one you had. Don Muraco Don Muraco versus Dino Bravo with Frenchie. And it was during this match that Bobby the Brain came out to do commentary or something, and he was basically just busting on Billy Graham the entire time, talking about how Dino Bravo was actually the world's strongest man. He was being billed as that at the time, and it was a nothing match. I'm pretty sure that, hell, I don't even remember who won. I want to say that Muraco Dino Bravo ended up winning it after. I don't even remember how he won it. That's how memorable the match was. I remember Dino Bravo won for some reason. And then you had a match with Rick Rude versus Junkyard Dog. Rude comes out, does his usual spiel. Rude, of course, had Bobby Heenan with him. And he's got JYD all painted all over his tights there. And it was basically a whole lot of Rude trying to work around JYD. JYD was never known as being the greatest wrestler ever. He was one of those that he had a lot of charisma, not a lot of wrestling ability. So it was a lot of Rude working around him, trying to wear him down and everything. Towards the end, you see Rude decide to climb up he climbs up to the top ropes to do a knee drop or something. And as he's standing up there, he pulls down his tights to reveal another pair of tights under them that had Jake Roberts' wife plastered on his crotch and ass. Then he dives off onto JYD, turns around, swivels his hips all over the place, turns his back, swivels some more. Of course, Jake Roberts gets all sorts of pissed, charges the ring, attacks Rude, knocks him out of the ring. He does this ridiculous 360 flip over the top rope, landing on the outside. And so, yeah, the match itself was basically just there to further along the Jake Roberts-Rick Rude feud, which in my opinion was one of the more underrated feuds of the time. Then, let's see, what else was there? You had Big Boss Man versus Coco Beware. Boss Man being accompanied by Slick. As I said, there are a lot of fucking managers. This was another one that was just basically, I'm thinking Boss Man had just debuted not long ago, and this was more of a match showing him off, and he does eventually get the win with the Boss Man side slam. There was one really, really ridiculous botch that I don't know what the hell they were thinking. Boss Man has Coco laid out, and then Boss Man decides that he really needs to climb the top turnbuckle. Now remember, Boss Man was about 350, 400 pounds at the time. Not somebody that should be climbing the top turnbuckle for any reason whatsoever. Now, I'm not sure what they were trying to do, but he comes off to try to do some kind of knee drop or something. Coco barely rolls out of the way, but instead of it being one of those, well, he rolled out of the way, Boss Man tweaks his knee or does something so he can get a... He doesn't. He just kind of rolls through it and kind of acts like he did hit him and then proceeds to beat on him some more. It was just really awkward, and I have no idea what the hell what was going on that one. Then, throughout the night they had been talking about how Honky Tonk Man was going to be defending his Intercontinental title. And his original opponent was supposed to be Brutus the Barber Beefcake, but Brutus Beefcake had been attacked by Ron Bass and cut up with his spur and everything, so he was unable to. So you got Honky Tonk Man coming out to the ring, saying he's the greatest champion of all time, Intercontinental champion of all time. He'll take on anybody. I don't care. Whoever's back there, whoever thinks they can challenge me, I'll take you, anybody. Well, of course, this leads to the return of the Ultimate Warrior, who spends the next 30 seconds to a minute beating the crap out of Honky Tonk Man, splashing him, and winning the Intercontinental title. So that was that. Then there was another tag match, the tag title match. Demolition with Mr. Fuji and Jimmy Hart versus the Hart Foundation, Bret Hart and Jim the End Neidhart. I'm assuming this is right after Jimmy Hart had turned on the Hart Foundation and joined with Fuji costing the Hart Foundation the tag titles or something. But there was a kind of awkward dynamic throughout the match because Bret Hart was still wrestling more as a heel. The Hart Foundation and Demolition, it was basically a heel versus heel dynamic. So it didn't really mesh very well. I don't know what was going on, but the end comes when Jimmy Hart had disappeared to the back for some reason, and then Bret was about to pile drive Smash when Jimmy Hart shows up, throws the megaphone to Axe, who blasts Bret Hart in the back of the head, rolls out of the ring when the ref's not looking. Then Smash just rolls over, pins him, and they retain their tag titles. So again, it was one of those really weird dynamics going on in that match. Then you had Dino Bravo with Frenchie Martin versus Don Muraco, the original Rock. The only real thing to note out of that match was Bobby Heenan had come out for some reason, and his entire shtick was just ragging on Billy Graham there for whatever reason. I don't know what was being accomplished with there. But the other thing I noticed throughout the show that really struck me as odd, that they kept really also hyping two things. Survivor Series 88 was brought up several times, plus a upcoming Sugar Ray Leonard versus some guy named Lalonde, some white guy that you could just see was going to get his ass kicked by Sugar Ray Leonard anyway. Boxing match. They had at least 3 or 4 commercials for this boxing pay-per-view coming up in like November of that year. That really struck me as really odd that they would put that much attention on this boxing match. But again, and again, after every one of those commercials, you would have Gorilla Monsoon going, "Yeah, that's a happening. I'm going to be there. Are you going to be at the happening? This is a happening. Everything's a happening." I have no fucking clue what the hell he was talking about. But that was Gorilla Monsoon for you. Then you have the main event. Main event was the Mega Powers, Hulk Hogan, and Macho Man Randy Savage, who was the WWF champion at the time, with Miss Elizabeth, versus the Mega Bucks, Ted DiBiase, and Andre the Giant, with Bobby Heenan and Virgil in their corner, and they had appointed Jesse Ventura as the special guest referee. The story going in, I'd like to know the whole backstory of exactly why Savage wasn't actually defending his title against somebody at this time instead of tagging with Hogan, but I really don't. Yeah. Anyway, so they did a thing where Savage was being interviewed. Andre comes out and confronts him. DiBiase attacks him from behind. They beat him down pretty good. Then the next week, Savage challenges them to a tag match, and he's going to announce his partner at a later date. And then, of course, it's revealed that it's going to be Hulk Hogan as his partner. I guess Hogan had been away for a while and had just come back or something. And again, the other story was whether Jesse Ventura was going to actually call the match down the middle, because he had apparently been paid off by Ted DiBiase. You had a segment with Brother Love talking to Jesse, saying how he was scared of Andre the Giant and everything. Then Andre and Bobby and Million Dollar Man and Virgil all come out, and Andre had basically threatened him, saying, "You better pay close attention what you're doing out there, or I'll squash you like a bug," or whatever Andre was going to do. And then DiBiase comes up and just starts shoving like $100 bills inside of his jacket and stuff, saying, "Yeah, you should pay really close attention to what's going on, because people who pay really close attention to the Million Dollar Man really can do well for themselves." So it was obvious that DiBiase was paying off Jesse Ventura at that point. So, yeah, the match starts, and before it even starts, you have Jesse ordering all the managers out of the ring and everything, and then for whatever reason, and it never really becomes clear why the fuck he did this, other than he just wanted to draw more attention to himself, I guess. He decided he didn't like where the tag ropes were, and changed the corners on both the tag ropes. So it never really came into play during the match or anything. It was just something that, like I said, I think it was Jesse Ventura trying to make sure everybody knew that he's Jesse Ventura and he's also part of this. He was making sure his ref job here was really paid attention to. So anyway, it was a bit of back and forth going here and there, and a lot of it was Jesse blatantly doing slow counts on when Hogan and Savage had got pins, and letting the heels get away with everything, but not letting Hogan and Savage have any breaks or anything. And then towards the end of the match, you have Andre and DiBiase had thrown both Hogan and Savage out of the ring, and Jesse starts making the count. Well, Elizabeth gets up on the ring rope, and she'd been wearing this nice yellow mini skirt and top type deal to match the Hogan Savage things, and then you have Bobby and Virgil on the other side getting up on the ring apron trying to get her taken down, and she's kind of wandering around, and all of a sudden out of nowhere she whips off her skirt. Now you would have thought that she was wearing like pasties in a thong, the way these guys were drooling over and just completely blinded by her beauty. You can definitely tell this was a thing of its time, and for 88, yeah, it was rather shocking to see Elizabeth show her sexuality that way. She was never known for doing that. This was the first time she ever did that, but it just completely bamboozled all the heels. They had no idea, and all she's doing was walking around on the outside ring apron, and they're just staring at her, like I said, like she's wearing pasties and a thong, doing a strip tease or something. They'd never seen a pair of legs before or anything, which of course leads to Hogan and Savage recovering, coming in, laying out the heels, doing a double team. Hogan slams DiBiase, Savage comes off with the elbow drop, Hogan hits the leg drop, but because of course, why would you want to have your champ get the pin in the match when you have Hulk Hogan in the match? I don't know. But Ventura goes down for the count. He does 1, 2, and he's like really, really slowly, and then Savage just grabs his arm and slams it down for the 3 count, and they're all celebrating, and then Hogan throws Elizabeth's skirt out into the crowd and everything. So somebody got a good souvenir there. But yeah, that was SummerSlam '88. It was, you could definitely tell it certain things do hold up, certain things don't. And it was definitely one of its time. The like I said, the announcing was really, really interesting. But anyway, so that's it for SummerSlam '88. Let me just get my plugs out of the way. You got Josh Baker and Beer and Song of the Day, Justin Dimmitt's Prosper, Kevin Sherman's Heavy Metal and Booze, and make sure you also check out the On the Network podcast with Richard and Tyler. They're going to be starting to integrate the audio portion of this show onto their podcast network stuff, so keep an eye out for that. That's pretty fun because they've actually gotten me some really cool show art and a cool intro and outro music. So anyway, that's it for today. This is George the Drunken Animal, looking up at the lights, taking the 1, 2, 3, doing the JOB. Later, folks.